The Odd Little Christmas Tree. Once upon a time, there was a little girl called Nora, who lived with her mum and dad in an old cabin just outside a little town in America. They were a very poor family, but they were also very happy and loved each other very much. Nora's dad found it difficult to find a job, but he had a small garden in front of their cabin where he grew lovely organic vegetables and would sell them in the market in town. It was getting near Christmas time, and outside the big shop at the gas station near where they lived, there were freshly cut Christmas trees for sale. Nora was dying to get a Christmas tree for their cabin so she could put decorations on it and maybe even a fairy or a star at the top. But every time she asked her mom and dad, they would say that, well, they would have to wait because they couldn't afford to buy one right now. Meanwhile, at the gas station, there was great excitement, and all the Christmas trees were chatting to each other about what kind of decorations they would like to wear and what kind of lights they might get wrapped in and where they would be going when they got sold. There were all shapes and sizes. Some were tall, some were very short, some were chunky, and some were very skinny. There was one rather oddly shaped little Christmas tree. He was very short, with a couple of uneven branches sticking out his side, and a long bent-over neck. He tried to join in the conversation, but before he could say much, some of the other trees told him to be quiet and that nobody would be buying him anyway, because he was much too ugly. The odd little tree felt sad inside, but tried not to show it. And all he could do was put on a brave smile and say, "Well, it's just the way I'm made, I guess. Maybe somebody will like me." He had a special friend, though. She was a beautiful little tree, so sweet and kind, and she told him not to bother with those mean trees making fun of him, and said, "Don't worry, you'll get sold too one day. You'll see." But the very next day she was sold, and more trees were being bought all the time as it was getting very close to Christmas Day. Any time when people came by to choose a tree, the odd little tree would stand as straight as he could, stretch out his funny-shaped branches, and pray that he would be picked. But it was no good. They always seemed to pick someone else. More time passed, and soon he was the only tree left in the shop, and it was nearly Christmas Eve. He felt so sad and unwanted, and if a Christmas tree could cry, well, he would have. It was Christmas Eve, and Nora and her mum and dad were going into town to do some Christmas shopping. And as they passed the gas station, Nora reminded them that they still didn't have a tree. And could they drop by the gas station? "Please, just to have a look." Her mum said, "Sorry, but I don't think we will bother getting a tree this year," and explained that money was still a bit of a problem. Nora was very sad and pleaded with them just to go in for a look anyway. "Okay," said her dad, "we can go, but I'm not promising I'll buy one." When they got there, they saw that there was only one tree left, the odd little Christmas tree. And boy, did he look lonely. Nora thought he was lovely, though, and said, "Please, Mum and Dad, can we just get that little guy? He looks so nice." So her dad asked the man in the shop how much he would cost, and he just laughed and said, "Why, you can have that little runt for free. He's no good to me." Nora was over the moon and couldn't wait to get him home. Once they got home, Nora's dad got out an old bucket and filled it with sand and put the little tree in the bucket by his stump. Her mom said that they couldn't afford to buy baubles and lights, but suggested that maybe they could make some. And that's just what they did. They gathered up some tinfoil and coloured paper and cardboard and cut them into Christmas shapes like bells and angels and things. The little Christmas tree was so delighted to be part of Christmas and dressed in decorations and also to be admired by such a nice family, especially Nora, that he forgot all about being sad anymore, and they all had a wonderful Christmas. A few weeks later, the little tree began to notice he was changing, and that lots of his needles were beginning to fall out. Not only that, he was starting to turn kind of brown and felt very sleepy all the time. Nora's mom said, "I think it's time we did something about our little tree, Nora. He is beginning to make a bit of a mess on the floor." "Well, where will we put him?" asked Nora. Her mum said, "There is a place in town that can turn him into wood chips, and then he could be useful for someone's garden, maybe." "No!" cried Nora. She was horrified and didn't want him to go anywhere, and she got very upset. Her dad tried to calm things down a bit and said that they could plant him out near his vegetable patch, and, who knows, he might grow again, although he didn't really believe that could happen. So, that's what he did. And the little tree stood in the garden all through the cold winter and into spring. And then, one nice spring morning, something strange happened. The little tree, who had been sleeping all winter, began to wake up. "Hey, wow, I'm outside now and I feel kind of warm and cozy, and there's a funny tingling feeling at my feet. It feels like my roots are growing." He was right. Tiny little roots had started to grow out of his little stump in the warm spring soil. And he was turning green again. "It's a miracle," he said to himself. "I'm alive again." "Look," said Nora's dad, who couldn't believe his eyes. "Your tree is growing again." Nora was ecstatic and squealed with delight and danced around the tree, laughing and singing. And grow he did, for the rest of the year until winter came again, and by then he was a fabulous, tall and majestic tree. Everyone in town would admire him so much as they drove by, and all the children would ask their mums and dads could they have a tree like Nora's. Now, you might think that's the end of the story, but there's more. One evening, about 2 weeks before Christmas, a big fancy car stopped at the cabin, and out stepped a very beautiful lady. She knocked on the door and said, "Good afternoon. I was just on my way to the White House and I saw your beautiful Christmas tree." Nora's mom and dad nearly fainted with shock, for it was the President of the United States. "May I come in, please?" she said. Nora's parents could hardly speak and mumbled, "Of course, ma'am." "Oh," said the President when she came into their cabin and saw some of Nora's dad's vegetables on the kitchen table. "I see you grow some organic vegetables. How lovely." "Well," she said, "I have just come back from shopping, and I couldn't find a Christmas tree that would be nice enough for the White House rose garden. And then I saw your beautiful tree outside and was wondering if you might be interested in selling it to me. I will pay a good price." "Yes, ma'am. We would be glad to sell it," said Nora's dad, and her mum nodded in agreement. The next minute, though, they all noticed Nora was standing with tears streaming down her face, and she blurted out that she didn't want to sell her tree to anyone. Nora's mum hugged her and told the president the story of the odd little tree, and how he had come back to life and everything. The president was quiet for a few moments and looked kind of thoughtful, and then she said, "I have an idea." She turned to Nora's dad and said, "I need someone to grow organic vegetables in my large garden at the White House. So maybe you could come and work for me. Of course, I will pay you, and there would be a free cottage where you could all stay, and Nora would be able to visit the rose garden and see her tree any time she wished." Of course, they were all delighted and agreed immediately. Now, every year, Nora's dad decorates the huge Christmas tree in the president's rose garden. And whenever any of the president's important friends come to visit at Christmas time, they all marvel at the enormous, beautiful Christmas tree, and the president usually smiles and tells them this story too. The Odd Little Christmas Tree was written and produced by Ronnie Costley, read by Gavin Mitchell, features artwork by Jim Doak, music by Tom Mason and Lost Straitjackets, and was mixed and mastered by John Fitz at Letter Column Studios in Ireland. If you've enjoyed our wee tale, then please feel free to donate by clicking the link below. And have a very Merry Christmas.